Good morning, everyone. Looks like we are live and good to go. Let me just bring in the chat. I'll just put it right next to me. In case there is any questions or anything that you want to suggest today, not sure entirely what we're gonna be doing, but we'll have a think about it. Just give me 1 second. All right, good to go. Alrighty, hi everyone. Make it last media, Jiri. Thanks for tuning in. Microgron. Sometimes those nicknames are kind of like hard to pronounce. Hey guys, welcome. So yeah, it's been a while. I was weak. I was I was weak. I was sick and weak for the last week, and yeah, I'm much better now. So it feels like it's been a while, but hopefully we can make up for the lost time. Hey Eamon, John, love the research lab. Oh, cool. Thanks, John. Glad you like it. So John is talking about the recent project that we finished for the 3D snippets just yesterday, actually. Well, or the day before. Yeah, I just posted something very recently just to finalize the September's project, and we're about to start with a new one. Hey Frosty, cool. All right, so yeah, like I said, it's been a while, and I just want to start with a new project, like fresh, the early October, and because it's October, I thought it would be kind of like cool to do something to do with Halloween. It's the Halloween month. But something different. Again, I always think about what can I show you in terms of like techniques or even things that I don't know much about it that I'd like to explore and just see if I can find workarounds or things like that. So I thought we could do that today as well. And I don't have necessarily an idea of what to do. So if you guys have any suggestions, by all means. So I thought we can start with kind of like a scarecrow character type of thing, or yeah, something Halloween-esque. So yeah, if you have any suggestions, I'm happy to sort of like change along the way. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and start the blocking as usual, just to get something going. All right, so I have I think this is, yeah, let's do it like this. All right, so I have a polysphere. I'm just gonna keep this one as it is, and I'm gonna go ahead and block out. This is gonna be the head. That's as simple as that. And I'm gonna block out the rest. So I'm gonna go ahead and append a. Come on, append a cylinder 3D. So like that, and this is going to be the main piece of wood that is holding everything together. And this probably won't be as visible, but it would be a good reference for the scale, I suppose. Just to have an idea. You can also bring in, let's actually change something here. I'm gonna bring this thumbnail. In case you didn't know, this thumbnail is under the preference palette thumbnail. So this is what I just turned on that I have in my UI. And you can actually make it, you can invert the color. So right now it's just showing you a black silhouette over a white background. So what I like to do is, well, first, if you have like the color swatches here, just make sure that you have at least one of them is black, so that you can, from this background, click and drag and select pure black. And ZBrush, obviously, everything that is pure black, it will treat it as a transparent object. So now you see it's kind of like inverting the colors, and now black is transparent. So I can now click anywhere here and then just drag, and I can scale that thumbnail. So this is just a fantastic way of keeping track of the entire, volumes that you're playing around with, and for scale and things like that. I use it all the time. All right, so I'm gonna duplicate this cylinder, bring in the gizmo again, and I'm gonna rotate it 90 degrees. And this will be kind of like the shoulders of the scarecrow. Kind of. Maybe we do one of those scarecrows that have like the arms hanging out. Yeah, something like it. So this, more than the block out, actually, this is kind of like the structure of how we can fit everything else. It's gonna be pretty organic. Like I said, I'm not entirely sure where I'm going with this, but you know, this is gonna be the structure, and then we'll make something interesting out of it. Yeah, I think that's it. Maybe we can combine these two together. So I'm gonna hold Control E, which is my shortcut for merge down. So this one right here. So I assign a shortcut just because in Photoshop I use Photoshop quite often as well, and that is the shortcut to merge layers. So Control E. So I try to do that. This is kind of like a tangent already from what I'm talking about, but I tend to do that with lots of different software that I use often. If I find that it's kind of like muscle memory, the shortcut. If I find that a shortcut that I use a lot in one software, and I have the ability to do similar things in a different software, I try to keep them the same so that I don't have to relearn a new set of shortcuts or something like that. So that's the great thing about ZBrush, is that you can customize it the way that you want. So even if the shortcut is different, sometimes I override it and change it with something that I actually use in other software. Anyway, point of story is I can hold Control E and I can merge these down like I would merge things in Photoshop. That's it. Hey Shane, Lila, hang on, Lila. Is this Lila the ZBrush streamer? There's a new ZBrush streamer called Lila, but I don't know if that's you, Lila. Anyway, I'm pretty sure it is, but if it is you, welcome aboard. Great to have you here. Maverick Designs. Hi, it's nice to see you. Is that you, Victor? Hi, Chris. Yep. Awesome. Welcome. So great. Pressure's on. So for those of you who don't know, Lila just joined the streamer team, so you might see some new stuff coming up. Anyway, go back to what I was saying. I tend to just branch out too much. So we have this stickman figure. Let's go ahead and make something a bit more interesting. I'm gonna start with the blocking of what it could be the filling of this scarecrow, like the clothing. But we're gonna make something interesting out of it. So I'm gonna duplicate the same stick figure thing that we have, like that structure, but this time I'm gonna give it volume. So a very simple thing that I can do is, if I go into solo mode, I can go ahead and inflate this thing, and that obviously is gonna make everything a lot bigger. So I'm gonna use this like that, right, just to inflate it. For those of you who don't know, this is a custom palette, and if you want to learn how to do this specific palette, I have a tutorial in the ZBrush guides. Just go ahead and just type, I think, custom UI or customizing UI or something like that in the new ZBrush guides, and you'll find it, how to make it. But if not, you can go to deformation, and in the formation palette, just use what I have. So inflate, and yeah, so I'm just gonna do that a few times. It's going to get out of solo mode, so you see we just, inflating this way too much. I'm gonna try to keep let's say the torso, which would be the equivalent of this. I'm actually going to do auto groups just to so I can refer to this, and then you know what I'm talking about. So let's say this is the orange, this is the yellow. The yellow one, I want it to be almost the same width as the head for now. So that's a good size. We can also turn on transparency so we can see the stick figure thing. And then we can use, let's go for activate symmetry and the knife curve brush. I'm just gonna slice things here. Yeah, something like that. Maybe more, less than this. I was just thinking that I did mention that I was gonna do sort of kind of hanging arms. So I could do something similar like this, and then we can extrude the rest of the arms. And then I'm just gonna cut this one here, get out of transparency. And now we have some like volume that we can play around with. But again, this doesn't look like anything yet. The idea is to use other tools just to speed up the process, basically. I'm gonna isolate this one, and I'm gonna reduce the size by deflating it. So I'm using the inflate in the negative values. It doesn't matter that it's going all crazy. Oops, actually it doesn't matter. Let me go back. I'm gonna hide this one actually. There we go. And I'll do the same thing. So I'm gonna it's not gonna work. I'm gonna bring the gizmo. I'm gonna do it with the gizmo, just so we can see a bit of the neck, really. Cool. And the other thing is to do, like, in order to do the arms, I'll do that after. But yeah. So now, going back to the original point, I'm gonna go to the geometry palette, and I'm gonna click on Dynamesh. Whoa, that's way too big. I'm gonna keep it simple for now. There we go, something like this. And then with the move brush, I'm just going to, with the symmetry enabled, I'm just gonna adjust it slightly, and also with the smooth brush, just so that we have a better volume for this guy, which still looks pretty awful. All right, just a bit of smoothing. And I'm going to use the select lasso to, the select rectangular piece to hide these interior pieces, or not interior, like the caps of those cylinders, like so. And I'm going to delete hidden, right? And then what I'll do is I'm going to bring in, let's turn off thumbnails so that you can see things better. I'm going to bring in dynamics palette, and right now this blob of mesh has 20,000 polygons, which is, you know, perfect for dynamics. I mean, it's not too much. And then if I just click run simulation, everything's gonna fall down and nothing's gonna happen, right? And that is, you know, partly because I haven't set anything up, right? So what I want to do is turn off the head just temporarily, so that it doesn't get affected by this stick figure. And I'm gonna click on collision volume. So that basically tells ZBrush, look at everything else that I have visible in the scene or in the canvas, aside from obviously the selected tool, and make it a collision mesh. So when you run the simulation, it's going to collide or interact with it, right? So I'm gonna click on run simulation again, and now we have this happening, which is cool, but not necessarily what I want, right? So this can give you like an idea of how to get started, but you'll see you get these very interesting folds and all of that, you know, straight away. So it might be something that you want to use and, you know, cut it up into pieces if you want. So just to show you what I mean by this, this is not how it's going to look, but if you, let's say you do run a simulation and you're testing it, right? Like you're not like the thing with simulation is that you'll have to fiddle with the sliders to get it just right. But let's say if you do a test and you find out like, oh, this is actually something cool that I can use, which I think might be interesting for like the neck or something. What I like to do is duplicate it, right? So now we have two of the same, but the duplicate has no undo history, but the previous one does. So I will go back to the previous one, undo, right? So I get back to where I was before, but then I have a duplicate with this kind of like state. So in this case, I can just go ahead and, oops, let's use this, the knife curve. Got this up. Sorry, I'm not using the knife curve. Am I? Oh, because this is an open mesh. That's right. Sorry. It will be easy just if I use the select rectangular piece. Just select something like this, delete hidden, right? And then I can redynamesh if I want to. Maybe we'll probably have to close the caps actually. So let's try that first. All right, let's try that again. I'm gonna close holes so that this is a solid mesh, again. And now I can use the knife to cut it. And then I can redynamize with a high resolution. Do a bit of smoothing. Right? So I have this piece that if I need to, for whatever reason, I can use. So I'm just going to put it at the top, which, you know, just to give you something else, but that's not what I'm going to do. So let's go back to this guy. So we need to tweak a few things. So this inflate is going to be the distance between whatever you simulate and the collision objects. So let me do it once again. Just a quick simulation, and you'll see the distance between, you know, the, let's say, the sleeve of this piece and the actual stick is like this long or this much. That is what the inflate is doing. So we don't need to actually create a larger volume to simulate things. We can actually play around with this. So let me give you a practical example of that. So I'm gonna go Shift S to drop a just a screenshot in there. I'm gonna undo now, and I'm gonna increase this to 5. Run simulation, and you see that now there's like a 5. Yeah, there's a lot more gap in here. So that's kind of like what I want in terms of the how much the internal structure is repelling things. Let's undo that. I'll start tweaking this a bit more. Maybe less than that. Yeah, I want the scarecrow to be skinny anyway, but not that skinny. So I think 1.5 should be okay. Right. Okay, stop that. Let's clear the canvas. So that's much better. Now the next thing that is kind of like giving me an issue is the fact that everything is kind of like stretching way too much, and it's creating like very thin or tiny wrinkles, right? So what we can do is increase the firmness. So I'm going to increase the firmness to, let's try 4. Run the simulation again, and you'll see the folds are a lot thicker, and that basically gives more structure to the piece of fabric that we're trying to simulate in here. All right, I think that's not too bad. So now I can go ahead and close holes, right? Just what I did before. And then I'm gonna use my move brush. And just because I'm still blocking things out, I just use the simulation to help me get to somewhere faster than if I just have to sculpt all these things. But I'm still blocking things out. Like this could change drastically, right? So what I'll do is I'm gonna click on mirror and weld so that I can have symmetry. I'm gonna smooth this out, and I'm gonna redynamize this object. Let's see. Maybe this is too much. Let's go for 104. Yeah. Still want to keep it low. All right. So I'm gonna push these sleeves up a bit. Also, you might notice that I just reached the maximum draw size. That's because now this scale is massive. So just something quick you can do. You can use the scale master to just scale everything in the scene so that it fits the 2x2x2 scale that ZBrush likes. But another quick thing you can do is go to the Z plugin, go to the Transpose Master. Actually, let's turn everything on. Click on Transpose Master, T-Pose Mesh. ZBrush is going to create a single object or single tool, and I'm going to click Unify, and that's going to make it it's going to make it fit within that 2x2x2, which is in the geometry palette you have this size, and this size relates to that volume that ZBrush likes. So now you see it's within at least the x-axis. Yeah, it's within that 2x2x2. So now I can go back in this Z plugin, T-Pose to sub, and ZBrush is going to scale everything back on each sub tool. Like I said, you can do this the scale master. This is kind of like the old method of doing it, and I kind of like used to it, and it's pretty fast anyway. So now I have my brush size that behaves a bit better. All right. So let's push this. Again, all of this is going to change. I just want to create something so that I can run another simulation. And you'll see why in a second. All right, so I'm going to use the mask lasso. I'm going to mask this area. In fact, let's push this out a bit. Just a bit and redynamish. Oops. Oh, that's another thing, right? Because I changed the scale to fit what ZBrush prefers. The Dynamesh is one of those tools or one of those features that it is depending on the resolution, on the size of the object, because it's ultimately like a grid, which we talked about that before. Anyway, so I think something like this is fine. I'm going to invert that mask, holding Control and click once in the canvas, and this time I'm going to turn off this frame or that structure thing. I'm going to turn off collision volume. I don't need it right now. And I'm going to click on run simulation just to run these bits, right? You see just the area that I have masked, unmasked is going to have that simulation. So let's go ahead and hold the control key and click a couple of times, maybe invert it and click once again and invert it, just to blur the mask. In case you didn't know, you can, when you have something masked, you can hold Control and click on the mask to blur it. You can also hold Control Alt to sharpen it, like so. Oh, but yeah, I want blur so that the transition is a little bit slower. And again, I can just run the simulation and get something cool. And you might notice as well that now this thing is kind of like intersecting itself. So there's like these weird things. Again, because I'm blocking things out and this is just a Dynamesh object, I don't mind. I can just redynamesh it and keep working on it. But if you want to avoid this, let's undo that. We can also enable the self-collision here. So I can set this to 1, run the simulation, and now ZBrush is going to be a bit more careful about how the mesh itself collides with itself. Still do it, right? Less than before. So you can just keep changing this. You can also enable the simulation iteration so that it kind of like adds more resolution to it. There we go. So less, you still have it there. Can increase the simulation iterations a bit. But anyway, that's not the point. We can just run that, and that looks pretty good, right? But obviously, this is going to be, you know, I want this to be a bit longer in terms of the size of the sleeves. Let me just have a look at the chat and see if there's any questions so far. Hola, CEM. Saludos de Argentina. Love the new course promo. Thanks, mate. Yeah, the new course promo, more than a promo, is more about it's like a little demo reel from the students, and yeah, some testimonials that I got, and I'm talking about the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course, by the way, which if is something that you're interested. That's a course for absolute beginners to learn ZBrush from scratch. So that's what we're talking about here. Is there a way to having a really large soften to a mask, like soft selection in Maya? Let me see if I get this right. Is there a way to having a large soften to a mask? So if you have like your mask already, like I have here, the question is if you can smooth it out to have like a soft selection in Maya. Is that the question, or more like a way of moving things like a soft selection in Maya? Is that the question? Sorry, I'm not getting it. But while I wait for the answer, so now that I have this thing in here, what I can do is run another simulation every time that I run a simulation over a simulation, it's going to apply the same settings to the new state. So I can run the simulation, and you see it sort of like goes down a little bit, and I can go again, you know, and keep doing this just to make it go lower. And I'm losing a little bit of the definition here, but that's no problem. This is what I wanted to do. Now I can redynamesh. And again, you can block this out in any other ways, but just the fact that I have this already with some hints as to what to do is pretty useful, even though the folds are not necessarily fully like behaving properly, as in the tension points are, you know, all over the place. But again, it's just to block things in a slightly different way. Obviously, if I smooth all of this, you see it changes things. Anyway, so let's go back to this guy. I'm gonna duplicate it so you can see the original, but then I'm gonna use this to literally sculpt things and add and change. Like I said, this is going to change quite a bit. All right, so I'm gonna use the move brush, maybe the inflate as well, just to add more volume, kind of like a make this guy to have some kind of belly here. Redynamesh. And one of the cool things about this method is that because it is Dynamesh and you can actually run simulation with Dynamesh, you don't feel constrained to, like, it's a lot easier to block things with Dynamesh, I think, in this technique, because you're not restricted to anything. You just like redynamesh, run the simulation again. In fact, I could run the simulation right now if I wanted to, and then I get like this horrible behavior just because obviously it is already intersecting this piece. But you know, if you wanted to, you could just open it up again and it'll work just fine. So what I'll do is let's push this guy forward a bit and back. So I'm using a large brush size. Dynamesh, okay. So not too bad. Maybe this is too long. So a lot of tweaking here, and we'll probably what I want to do is make this a bit more tubular. So with the inflate brush, just make it more of a tube. Just a little bit flatter there. But yeah, hopefully you get the idea. That's what I'm going for. That sort of look. And all of this is just using the move brush. As you can see, this I haven't started the sculpting process, which is something that I would do to enhance the, like, how this piece of cloth is actually interacting with the rest of the pieces, right? Just again to generate the tension points and the folds that sort of follow. All right. I think I'm actually going to cut this like so, and probably the same thing here. And let's try to make this guy a little bit skinnier. All right. So hopefully you can see now where I'm going with this. It's just a different way to block things out. And just to make these more creepy and bring it more into the Halloween-esque theme, I'm gonna work on the head a bit, but that will probably just be some sculpting, some good old sculpting. So let me just check the chat. Can you fade the mask by a lot? So it's very soft transition. In Maya, the soft selection is very easy to expand the large area and stretch it out of the mesh. All right, so I think I get it. You can do that. So you can mask something like this, and then with them, I have a masking tool here. This is just a Wacom thing. I'm using the Wacom Cintiq 24-inch Pro, but you can do this with even an Intuos. This is called the Express Keys or the Virtual Express Keys, I think, and you can customize it for whatever software. So I have this thing because I use masking a lot, and these are all settings for masking. So for example, if I go to the masking palette, most of these tools that you have in here, that's what I have in here. So if I want to grow the mask, just to expand it, I can just click on that and it would grow. And ZBrush, as you grow or shrink the size of the mask, is also going to apply a blurring effect. So that's the same thing as clicking on grow mask, right? Or shrink, right? I'm just shrinking and growing, so I can do these two things very easily, right? And you can also create a macro if you want, and you'll see how smooth this is. So if I invert that, and let's say bring in the gizmo, and I'll just push this in, that's a very soft selection, right? Now, that's one way to do it. However, there are a couple ways that I would suggest you can now do soft selection similar to Maya with ZBrush. So you'll notice that in my UI, I have these random numbers, 0, 0, 25, 50, and 75. Those are custom macros. And again, if you want to know how to create your own macros, I have another tutorial in the ZBrush Guides website, and I actually show you how to build these things and how to create this stuff. But then basically what they do is if I bring in the gizmo, right, and let's say I put the gizmo around here. Actually, let's do something for real. I'm gonna push this up, and I'm gonna give this guy a bit of a neck, so I can put the gizmo, let's say, around here. These numbers are actually the focal shift. So if I right click and you bring in this palette, and if you're gonna bring this palette, you can also do it from the draw palette. Let's actually put it in here, the draw palette. So this focal shift is set to -100, meaning that the gizmo is gonna take everything as 100% and just move it around. But you can click on, well, in my case, you can click on any of these or use this slider, the focal shift, to set it to 0. Right? And you'll see if I click on 0, 0, that's zeroing this out. 25 is just giving me -50. 50 is going to give me 0, and 75 is giving me like about 80. So those are presets that I use often. And what they do, if I click on 50, right? Like this is the focal shift at 0. With the gizmo selected, it gives you that soft selection. So you see it's not moving everything at once. If I want something a bit more, let's say, narrower in terms of the effect, right, or the fade, I can use something like 80 in the focal shift. Again, this is exactly the same thing that you have here for all the brushes, the focal shift for all the brushes. It's just that when you have the gizmo selected, this focal shift affects how much you're grabbing. So that's kind of like the soft selection equivalent in Maya, like that, right? And then you can just go very, very, very sharp to 95, and then just push this like so. Like this, right? So I can create that, and it works with everything. It works with scale. It works with, rotation. So I can make like this guy, give it a weird doctors, that Victorian age, the plague doctor type of thing. Anyway, so yeah, that's the soft selection. So if I set it back to 0, then it behaves like normal. So that's why I have this thing here, so I don't have to constantly go back and reset the focal shift. I just have like these presets, and those are just macros that I created myself. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully that helps. All right, go back to symmetry. give this guy a bit of a head. I'm gonna select this, the shirt, let's say, and I'm gonna mask this, show you something else that is pretty cool. Blur a little bit, bring back my dynamics palette. So if I click again, run simulation, it's going to run that with whatever settings I have in here, which is not what I need. But if I turn off collision, so there's not going to be any mesh or anything colliding with it, I'm also going to remove gravity, so there's not going to be any gravity or any force pulling things towards the floor. And I'm going to click on allow expand, just to allow the fabric to expand, just like this. And I'm gonna inflate things. Oh, I'm gonna cancel that. Maybe that was too much. I'm gonna remove the expand and then just use the inflate by itself first. And then allow expand. All right, that's about it. Remove the expand and then inflate. So you can keep using the dynamics to maybe add a bit of, you know, volume if you want, just playing around with this. I mean, this one wasn't as evident, but what I want to do is create some kind of like flaring here at the top, and then we'll fill that with hay, some kind of, you know, straw or something. I'm gonna use the inflate just to give this guy also some kind of shoulders as well. But anyway, this will come later with more of like the proper sculpting, hopefully. I want to keep this guy relatively skinny. I'll do the same thing here for the sleeves. Again, some kind of like tapering that happens because of maybe the amount of hay that I'm gonna add just to fill this guy. All right, so I said I was working on the head, so let's go back to the head. I'm gonna dynamesh this guy, maybe with a bit more resolution actually. That's, yeah, sounds good. And I'm gonna use my HR Geiger cutter, which is kind of like, you could use something like the thumb standard brush. For those of you who are not aware, this is part of a set of brushes called the these are some custom brushes that I've made. So this is part of the pack, the HR Geiger pack, which I'm actually might use in this creature character. So this one right here, I use this all the time. I use this more often than the damn standard brush. It's just like sharper and a bit stronger. So that's part of that, yeah, that pack in case you want it. And it's part, you can go to the ZBrush guides or the ZBrush guides.store and it's in there. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna add some kind of like features for the head. Dynamesh. Those are gonna be the eyes. Holding the Alt key just to add a bit of a nose. And a mouth. right? I mean, it still looks like a stickman figure, but I'm gonna try to keep it very, you know, very simple, and then just play around with things like the expression maybe. Maybe with the, let's go into solo mode so we can just work on the face and focus on that. With the standard brush, just add a bit of volume here to accentuate that expression. Even though this is gonna be a creature, I still wanted to feel like, you know, like a couple of kids put it together, and then it just, you know, became alive or something. But yeah, hopefully you can see like the importance of blocking things out. I'm gonna, just for comparison, I'm gonna keep this one and I just duplicate it, so you can see the difference later on. All right, so I'm gonna increase the resolution a bit more, and we can now go ahead and work a bit on some of the details of this. And I'm going to use the clay builder brush. And here's a pretty cool trick about the clay builder brush, something that you can do yourself. So this is the normal effect or the default effect of the clay builder brush. If you increase the roll distance, which I have in here, but that's under the stroke palette. Modifiers, yes. So stroke palette modifiers, this roll distance. If you increase that to, let's say, 6 or 5, something like this, what it's going to do is take whatever alpha you have. In this case, because it's the clay builder brush, I have this sort of square alpha, and it's gonna bring them close. It's gonna stretch the alpha actually, so it's gonna make sure that the iterations of each, it's gonna stretch the alpha, but it's gonna make sure that the iterations of the brush, it feels a lot smoother, because one alpha is gonna overlap better over the next one. Basically, yeah, if you do this, you see now it's a lot smoother. That is just because the alphas are kind of like stacking together, but they're like stretching as well. So if the default one, you get all these extra lines, but just by changing the roll distance, you have something a lot cleaner, which I kind of like. So I'll use this one to refine some of the volumes. And this is, there's nothing major here, just good old sculpting. Actually, I'm gonna keep the expression a bit more neutral, and then I'll do an angry expression with layers. That's something that I sent in my early today in my newsletter, and just a trick on how to use the layers in ZBrush to create like blend shapes in a very easy way, using ZBrush and Blender. So I might just use that as well. So I'm just gonna revert back a bit of that expression. And actually, I want to give this guy a bit more of define the lips a bit better. kind of working. All right, so that's pretty basic stuff. I'm gonna add, maybe this is kind of like some kind of like a pumpkin type of thing as well. So let's define this even more. And then I'm gonna use some of the custom brushes. In fact, let's increase the resolution even more. We'll probably have to already think of doing some kind of remesh, so we have more, you know, a cleaner topology for details. But let me add a few more. All right, looks a bit funny right now. I'll make it creepier in a bit. So I'm gonna I can show you the entire process, but just so that you can see another kind of like workaround or another trick. Right now, this is just a Dynamesh object, and I have a macro that is called Dyna to Subdi. I'm gonna click on that, and it's basically a series of steps and processes that I've set up in a single button in a single macro that allows you to take, or ZBrush takes whatever I have in a Dynamesh, is going to create a new topology with a series mesher, project all the details, and give you this, which is, you know, pretty decent, I think. So now I have subdivision levels and a cleaner topology to work with, right? So we have now 3 subdivision levels, this cleaner topology, following those shapes, and that's the reason why I like to just keep it very rough at the beginning, block things out, and then once I'm happy with the overall shape, I run that process, and yeah, and then I can just work a little bit better. So I'm gonna bring in some custom brushes. There's one that I might use for this, which just need to remember where it is. I think I'm gonna use this membrane control. That could be one. So this membrane control just creates this weird membrane. There's another one that is kind of like inverted that might work a bit better. Let's see, that's too much. Yeah, I think this one is fine. So what I'll do is, instead of pushing things out, I'm gonna push things in. So I'm gonna switch from ZSub to ZAdd, right? So that it just pushes things, and I'm gonna add a bit more resolution to it. So yeah, I'm gonna create a few lines with this, and then yeah, try to capitalize on those lines for the details. Maybe increase. Let me undo that. Even though I have these custom brushes that are ready to go, sometimes I just, for specific things, I try to tweak things like the intensity, the scale, things like that. So even though, yeah, there are custom brushes for specific purposes, I like to further tweak them depending on the project that I need. I'm gonna go from bottom to top just to variate those details a bit. So the idea with these lines is kind of like, yeah, just giving a hint that this could be a pumpkin, but, you know, pretty screwed up pumpkin type of thing. All right. Now a cool thing as well that I can do, and again, this is just an extra tip. I might not use it, but it's kind of cool. I went ahead and did those with this custom brush, but I can just go back in time, right? And before I added those details in here, I can hold the control key and set a point in history and then go forward. So now I have everything back in. And that little line in here in the undo history, that's telling ZBrush, hey, remember this point before I added these details. That's all I want you to do at this time. So I told ZBrush, remember this point. I'm gonna click on mask change points, which for you guys, that would be under the masking palette. Mask change points here. So that's what I have in here. And ZBrush is going to mask out whatever is different between that point that we set before we added the details and everything that we now have, right? So if I click now to invert the mask, you'll see I have those details. That's the new, that's what I can edit, right? So let me undo that. What I want to do is grow the mask a bit and maybe sharpen it. Nah, let's just keep growing it a bit. So it's essentially masking out these entire cuts, right? So if I go with the inflate brush, let's see if that works. I can inflate, I'm pressing really hard just to show you, but I can inflate all those pieces just to add that sort of, you know, more pumpkin shape. So that's something that you can use, but obviously this is way too much. So I'm just gonna use the standard brush to add a tiny bit of volume in between those. Oops. Again, just a hint. And then clear that mask. And then I'm going to use the HR Geiger cutter to refine some of these details. And I can actually push in some of these main lines even more. Now, the cool thing as well is with, let's say, with that brush that I use to start with these cuts, is that we have those additional details for free, and we can use that to sort of like connecting them together. So I'll try to do that in a second. And when I say connecting them, I'm just saying, like, for instance, use the standard brush and do this sort of stuff. So it does feel like yeah, I'm just trying to think about what to use as a reference point, but I'm thinking like a real pumpkin. That's why I did those shapes, but it's actually made out of some kind of fabric, like a fake pumpkin made out of fabric, something. That's the head of this guy. So yeah, just a bit of a subtle changes with the standard brush, and then just to add volume in certain areas. And we probably need to add some spheres for the eyes just so that you can see the expression, because it's gonna look a bit weird. Or yeah, we can do that. If you wanna, let's say, speed up the process of what I'm doing, although I would suggest this type of more featured, subtle tweaks of the sculpt to do it manually. But if you want to, I have another set of brushes called the cloth and drapery brushes. These ones right here, and these brushes are just to deal with clothing. So I'll probably use that in the in the shirt, for example. But you could use something like these X folds, maybe. That would be an easy one, just to do this type of stuff. So I'll do it here so you can see, just to create these folds and then just smooth that out, and that creates those nice sort of compression folds that you can use. But yeah, so I'm adding this as I also smooth everything. So I'll have to go back and, you know, revisit some of these crevices. All right, so I'm gonna sharpen this again. Some of these lines, for instance, here. All right. Also want to sharpen this one. And I think the nose could be some kind of like just a piece of bark or something. So I'm gonna show you another custom brush. Again, the custom brushes that I've made for myself are just purely for this type of things, just to speed up workflows really and make things a lot faster. But you can achieve the same result with, you know, brushes that come by default with ZBrush. So just masking that out. Maybe blur that in a bit. Oops. So I'm gonna bring another brush from a different pack called the Rocks pack, and I'm gonna use this Cliff Builder. And this, even though this is for kind of like rocks, it also can work pretty well as a way to create a bark type of texture, as you see. And then I'm gonna use the cutter again just to cut some crevices. Maybe turn off symmetry now. So just yeah, just imagine some like a piece of bark or a wood bit here. And we can even sharpen this with the damp standard brush by holding the Alt key, just to push some of these crevices out a bit. And that's just a quick and easy way to redefine some edges. All right, let's clear the mask. Actually, before I clear the mask, I'm gonna invert it and, you know, take advantage of the mask that I just created here. And I'm gonna use the inflate brush just to tighten this up a bit. Oops, let's go back in time. Yep, there. I'm gonna also enable symmetry. There we go. So that, yeah, just makes it easier. All right, I see some activity there in the chat. Let me give me 2 seconds, and I'll yeah, have a look and see if there's any questions about all of this. I did something. I think I chose a different brush when I had the move brush selected. Yeah. All right. So getting there, let me just add the two spheres for the eyes and refine the lips a bit, and that's it. So I'm gonna use a macro. Get out of solo mode, click on macro, and in the macros, this one that comes with ZBrush is called the append eyes. Is gonna take, gonna create a couple spheres, and that allows you to, essentially just place them as eyes. And that's a macro that comes with ZBrush. You can make your own as well. Yeah, so just with this, started to look a bit more creepy, right? And now now that I have this reference point, it's a lot easier to just adjust things. So I'm gonna use the standard brush and just push things a bit, and then push things out. So holding the Alt key just to add a bit of that sort of indentation there for the eye. Maybe an indication of some eyelids, so some kind of folds in here that we could also use potentially as an expression, something to add to the expression, really. Alrighty, so starting to, starting to look interesting. Still lots of things to do, but we're already halfway through, so just wanna finish the block out. I usually complete the block out of everything before starting this type of details, but I think it's fine. I think it works. All right. Let's have a look at the chat, and then we can start working on something a bit interesting. Hang on, I'm going back quite a bit. Quick question. What stage experience do you think it's useful to customize your ZBrush UI? So do you mean at what stage of your kind of like at what skill level you would change things? I think that's the question. I would say straight away, whatever works for you. In fact, the ZBrush, the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course. Let me just bring that here for you guys. So this is the course that I have in the 3DCA, the 3D Concept Artist Academy. Here we go. Oh, it's just loading. There we go. So this course, I'll put a link in here as well. So just to answer the question, so this course, it is one of the methodologies of how I make this course, and why is something different, like a different type of course, is because of how I approach the teaching of it. So the very first thing that we do before showing anything else is actually learning how to customize the UI. Because one of the scariest things, at least for me, because that's how I build this course, is like, what would I have wanted to have when I was learning ZBrush that I didn't, or just to understand things a bit better. So the whole point of this course is just to, I mean, it covers everything from the very beginning, but it's focused on workflows. It's a step-by-step, and the methodology is on how to customize the UI first. So once you customize the UI, or like I teach you how to do that, what we do is actually we remove everything from ZBrush. Like we remove all the buttons, so you have a clean UI that has barely anything. And then bit by bit, we start to add new buttons and new sliders as we progress in the course, and we build the UI from zero. So like there's no UI at the beginning, and then at the end of the course you have your own custom UI. But the way that we do it is with each lesson we add new features and new sliders. And what's cool about that is that you will it creates kind of like this muscle memory, and you will remember what those things are, because the entire lesson is focused on a specific workflow that uses those features. So to answer the question again is you can customize the UI at any point, and I'm just making the point here with this course that this is for absolute beginners. So you don't have to know anything about ZBrush to join this course, which by the way is open, so you can just enroll today if you want to. But yeah, you don't have to know anything, and that's the first thing that we do. We customize the UI. So you don't have to wait to certain stages or anything to customize the UI. The customization of the UI is ultimately to suit your workflow. So I would recommend you need to know the basics or the core ideas of ZBrush to understand what the principles are, or like what the features do, so that you can customize it to work for you. Otherwise, you can make something that looks really nice, but there's half a dozen buttons that you don't use as often, or you can't remember what they're for. And that's something that I do every time that there's a new version of ZBrush, or I just kind of like revisit my workflow and see, look, I haven't been using, let's say, the ambient occlusion, the preview occlusion as much, although I do, but I haven't used it as much, and I can just free up some space, and I just remove that and put something else. So do it at whatever stage you feel like, but just keep that in mind, that it's about customizing the UI in ZBrush is about improving your workflow and helping you work faster, I think. But anyway, if you want to, there's also a full-on tutorial in the ZBrush guides that I basically talk about this more in depth, and I show you how to customize it, how to create your own custom palettes like this. Yeah, all of that. But yeah, if you want to learn ZBrush from scratch, the Ultimate ZBrush Guides course, or UCG, is a pretty good place to start. And actually, we just released a reel, or a demo reel, from students' work. So I'll put a link to that as well, just because it's cool, and you can kind of like see a rough idea of what we do. And keep in mind that the work that the students have done, they're probably at the same sort of stage as some of you guys are that are just learning ZBrush. So they do some amazing work. Keeping in mind that they haven't even used ZBrush prior to this course. So I'll just send hang on, a link. Come on, my internet's pretty slow. All right, so you can just have a look at that trailer, and just see what students are doing and saying about the course. Anyway, let's get back to this bunch of spam in the chat today. Apologize for that. I'm not in control of the chat settings, but yeah, this bunch of spam, and don't click on any link unless it's the one I'm sending you. That's because, hang on, I'm just trying to look through some of the questions. When do you use creases, or when do you need to use creases? I think that's a very specific question about, like, you can use them whenever you want. I would use them when I'm working with, let's say, C-Modeler, or like something that is very low res, and I have like box modeling, and I can keep something very, very sharp. That's when I would use creases. But yeah, I cannot give you like a specific example right now, because it's very, very specific. Is that a camera locking button at the top left of your screen? If so, how do you manage to do that? It is this one right here. Yes, that is correct? So I can press this and then I won't lock the camera. That's something that by default in the default UI should be on the right hand side, but you can also go to the draw palette and it's this one right here. So I just put that button or that switch in there. So yeah, that's in ZBrush. I think this is a feature that was introduced relatively recent, so I'm not sure which version. I'm using 2022.0.5, if that helps. All right, let me see a few more questions. Hi Anand, welcome to the stream. Paul, do you teach how to create this macro Dyna to Subdi? Yes, I've taught that before in previous streams actually. I just can't remember in which one. I'll show you very quickly what it is, but it's very, yeah, it's very cool. I'll show you in a second. As a beginner, oh, no worries. Glad that this is helping. Cool. Alrighty. Yeah, the rest is just the spams. I don't know what's going on with that. Hey, Comics Legend, is this part of the new Discord challenge? No, this is not part of the Discord challenge. In fact, we're taking a break in October. I mean, we're doing something, but it's not the same as, because we just did like a massive sculptor September of Dragons, and that was like massive, really good. We're currently judging that, and Lucas Cuenca, the the creature lead from Double Negative, is actually judging that, which is awesome. So we'll release the winners soon. All right, I'm just gonna skip a few. The rest just. Cool. Alrighty. Abraham Diaz, give me your UI. You can grab it actually. It's in the ZBrush guides and in the YouTube channel. I use the AO to basically have an understanding of where the details are. Sorry, I've just been reading the chat. I know this part was a little bit boring, but if I do this, I can sort of see that the details are pretty strong. So the reason I use this in a few different ways. So if I just do like subtle cuts, let's say if I'm doing a more realistic skin, which it's all about the subtleties. If I start doing these things, I can clearly see that with the ambient occlusion, the preview. If I turn it off, it just sort of fades a bit. So it's just to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. It sort of helps me work in a way that I'm more used to, like with strong details. But then turning it off, I realize it's not that strong, and that's what I need for the, like sculpting skin, for example. Do you have a link to the tool you created to change blah blah blah? Yep. I don't have it with me, but it's a macro. You're having hard time learning C-Modeler. Again, if you go to the ZBrush guides, I have a few tutorials about the C-Modeler, like plenty, to get started with. And there's like a series just dedicated to the C-Modeler. And that's something else that I cover in depth in the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course as well. All right, cool. Let's go back to this. Let's create some kind of hat. Block the rest of it, or maybe not a hat, because the hat is maybe too typical. Maybe let's do like a hoodie or something. So and then with that, maybe I can show you the macro tip of going from Dynamesh to Subdivision. So I'm gonna take the head, duplicate it. Actually, I'm gonna do a quick save just in case. So now I have this as a as an extra thing. I'm gonna go ahead and click on Dynamesh. Whoops, nope. And I'm gonna polish this, and I'm gonna use the move brush. Sorry, move brush. Where are we? Move brush. I'm gonna smooth this out and basically remove all the details. So I just duplicated that head. Don't worry, I have the other one. And I'm also gonna give it just a color so that you can see clearly where that object that I have selected is. And I'm gonna use inflate just to give it some thickness. Redynamesh all of that, and smoothing. I also have, just to show you another cool macro. Again, I have tutorials on the ZBrush guides and a YouTube channel to do this type of stuff. But as you can see, if I press the smooth brush or use this smooth slider, it just takes quite a bit of time to smooth things properly, or it smooth this to a point that actually you don't see this much, and that's what I want to achieve. So I have this other macro, X5, and that's why sometimes I don't share the entire UI, because I have these random buttons that only make sense to me. So X5 is just gonna take this smooth and it's gonna apply it 5 times in a row. So I can click on that and just let it go. Like, it's still hard to see, but it's doing it a lot faster than, hopefully you can see, than using the slider. So that's one way to do it. Otherwise, I have the Smooth Brush Stronger that comes with ZBrush that allows me to smooth things faster, like so. Anyway, so that was another trick. Let's give this guy some kind of like hoodie style, or like one of those what's the name? Yeah, it's like a hoodie, like the Green Goblin type of thing. All right, and of course, hopefully you know what I'm gonna do with this. I'm gonna mask this, blur it a bit, make sure that, yeah, that's fine, and I'm gonna add gravity and run simulation to this. Oops. One thing I didn't account for is the fact that I have quite a few points. So let me undo all of this. Let's reduce Dynamesh, maybe a bit more. Yep. Actually, let me show you something else, because I've already kind of like covered the dynamics palette. You can also do the same thing, right? So I'm gonna blur that, but you can use the transpose cloth. So instead of the normal transpose, you can use this one, right? It looks exactly like the transpose, well, like the gizmo. I'm gonna center this to the mask area. Let's hold the Alt key and just rotate this kind of like in place. So it works exactly the same way. You can just use it to move things and rotate and scale. But because it says transpose cloth, it's going to use whatever settings you have in the dynamics, or in this case, this firmness of 4, the iterations, gravity, blah, 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 and it's going to act on it when you move it. So if I rotate this around, you'll see we have some nice effect. I'm going to probably change the mask a bit. Just blur it even more. Another thing, by the way, is you can use the little trick that I showed you before with these random numbers here, which are for the focal shift of the gizmo. You can also do that with the gizmo, with the transpose closed gizmo. So it would it would do both. It will apply the simulation type of thing, right, like this, at the same time that it only does it in a specific area. So it's pretty cool. All right, we invert the mask a bit. All right, so the next thing is I'm gonna use the clay brush, because that's a brush to do this type of things a lot faster. I'm gonna hold the Alt key and then just push things in to reveal the face of this guy. And I think that might be interesting. All right, And I'm going to use the move brush now to reveal a little bit more of this dude, with the face at least. All right, I think that's kind of working. I want to select the face now and push this just to make it a bit rounder. Yep, not too bad. So let's go ahead and use this as our reference to build that, like to show you what the macro that I showed before is actually doing. So I'm gonna go into solo mode, smooth this out as well. And let me just adjust this a bit. I'm also gonna use standard brush to fix the, have like a more proper folds. In fact, let me just bring in, sometimes let me just bring in some of the stuff that makes it a little bit easier to work with. So there's one that might be quite useful for this. So this compression folds might be too big, but it's too big. But there's one curve brush. So this one right here, the main fold simple. It is very simple, but it's very useful. So you can do these type of things, maybe with a smaller brush size, right? And because it is a curve, you can edit that curve. You can move that around. For example, you can do this. Right? And you can change the brush size and it will update. You can also do something like that. And then when you click Alt, you invert that effect as well. So that's pretty cool. So let me just do a few of these. And then of course, just smooth everything out just to clean the transition. But it's sort of like helps a bit. Anyway, just wanted to show you something else about that pack. I'm gonna mask this sort of corner. And I'm doing all of this so that I kind of like block the main, these big folds before I do the remeshing. And then some little bits and pieces that can be added after just with details. But these are kind of like main folds that would affect the actual topology, like at least the flow of the topology, so that I'm trying to keep that into account. Let's just keep that in mind, basically. All right, so the bottom, I'm just gonna cut it. And that's about it. Maybe, just so that we can have like a clean loop in here, I could also use this HR Geiger cutter to have like a very sharp line. You can do this with polygroups as well. So if you have different polygroups, you can ask the zero measure to deal with that. But this should give it a good reference point. This is still the Dynamesh, by the way, so that's why I'm sort of sorting out a bit of the volumes. That's why it's very important to block things properly. I'll do the block out first before doing what I was doing before. Anyway, so we have this thing, basically what the macro does. Oh, hang on. Lots of questions again. Hey Rhiannon, the hermit crabs called in Silver Central. Ah, awesome. Yeah, so this is the Dynamesh. So what this tool does, or this macro um, does, is basically take this Dynamesh and convert it into a series measure. So what it does, and you can record this in a macro yourself, is pretty easy. The first thing I want to do is click on subdivide. So it's going to take the actual Dynamesh object and it's going to subdivide it, right? And now that means I have subdivision level, right? So I can go between the first one and the second one, even though this is just a Dynamesh object. So what I want to do is click, now that I have this at the second subdivision level that I created, you can do more, right? You can do another one. Now I have 800,000, so that's totally fine if you want. I want to click on freeze subdivision level, right? And that basically freezes up that third subdivision level that I created, and ZBrush, once you press this freeze subdivision level, is going to send it back to the first subdivision level, which is the original Dynamesh that you had. So it hasn't changed anything. It's just that we have sort of created this second and third subdivision level to record and being able to freeze those details in there. So now I click on the freeze subdivision level, it goes back to what I had before, and I can go ahead and click on, let's open up from here. So the series measure palette, I can click on adapt. I can set a polygon target count. That's something that I have included in my macro, meaning that I can choose this slider and then click my macro, and it's gonna try to give me that target polygon count. So I'm gonna leave it at 5, which this number is in the thousands, so 5,000 polygons, and make sure symmetry is enabled, and that's it. So I haven't changed much really. Just leave the adapt on, click on series measure. So now we have our mesh, right? It looks pretty decent. You can do this, you can undo this and try different settings. You can reduce or increase this, totally up to you. But if you're recording it into a macro, it's ideal to test this out before you actually do it, because every time that you do something is going to be recorded in the macro. All right, so once you have this, what you do is unfreeze subdivision levels. And as you can see, ZBrush just goes back to that third subdivision level that we saved with Dynamesh and everything, and essentially keeps those details at that level. And we have now a retopology, or something that is cleaner topology, and it's going to take that third subdivision level that we subdivided and project those details, or try to keep those details, so we don't have to project anything. It's very simple, but it's super cool. So now I can clear the mask, right? And we have subdivision levels. And in some cases, depending on how well the series measure does its job, you could click on reconstruct one more subdivision level. In my case, it didn't work that well, but sometimes you can, and that way you have more. But yeah, so now you have 3 subdivision levels and a clean topology, and we preserve all those details from the from the Dynamesh. But you can also click on this X5 again, another random number. It's going to smooth things 5 times, and then you can go back and start refining this a bit. But now this has subdivision level, and it has a nice clean topology that we can use. We can go to the lowest subdivision level as well and continue the refinement process. Maybe I want to do some specific cuts, maybe in the center. I'm gonna subdivide this even more. Use the HR Geiger again. I use this brush a lot, and I'm just gonna do. Hang on. I'm gonna turn this on so that I can kind of see where the center is. Actually, I don't like it in the middle. Maybe I'll do 2. Something that it kind of like continues with just to add continuity to the design, to this other line in the head. Or not. I'm just trying to think what would be a cool way of doing this. probably like this. Cool. So hopefully that helps. Tony, where can I find the HR Geiger Cutter brush? So that just go to the ZBrush guides.com or .store if you already go. It's the same thing. So the ZBrush guide.store is just the store of the ZBrush guides, but it's this one. It has everything collected into a single place. So if you go to categories, just go to brushes, and here it is. So the Geiger and Meksinski tribute pack. So you can click on that. I'll send the link as well. And that one comes with all those brushes that I've been talking about. I'll put it here. But yeah, if you're interested, there's a bunch of other brushes that I'm also using. So the cloth and drapery brushes, that's the one that I've been using a bit. I might use it again. The rocks, that's the one that I use for the nose. Some of these ones are free as well, so you can try them. What else have I used? Yeah, these ones. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go for a. I might do it manually, but let's try and see if this one gives us a good result. So it might not be the same. Just following that line. Yep, that's pretty good. So again, that's another brush that comes with the cloth and drapery pack. So I could do the same thing in here, just to get that going. Or I can use another brush that allows you to do it more manually. So this is kind of like the pinch brush. Maybe this is a little bit too small. That's the thing, right? You can just try different things. There is another brush, might be good for this wrinkle wrap. Yeah, that one is probably better. So see, you could do this with the standard brush, but you know, I prefer to do this, speed up the process, and then have more time to think about the designs and just work a little bit faster. Why not? And some of these brushes actually are, I use them often, but I use them sometimes just to get me started. So for example, all of these things that I'm doing could be just the starting point of something else. So I would go with the damp standard brush or the HR Geiger cutter and refine things manually, like so. Maybe get out of symmetry here just to break that symmetry pattern. Yeah. So it's ultimately how you make, how you use them, right? They're custom resources, but that's the same thing with any other custom resource that you might find online. Mega scans or IMM brushes. Like you can get some pretty awesome stuff online, but it's how you utilize them, right? How do you make them work for you? So, and I sometimes use these brushes, like I show you with the nose, like the pack of brushes that I created for making rocks. It was very specific, and it was for a very specific project that I developed those. But not necessarily, they don't necessarily have to be just for rocks, right? So I use them to create like that sort of bark texture, or sometimes I use it for creature stuff. I think I use one of those for that hermit crab character that I did recently. I can't remember which one, but definitely something in there. But yeah, so hopefully all of this helps as reference. All right. I might just also add a few larger wrinkles here. that I should have blocked out first. Just as part of the folding of the neck. All right. Drop your questions in the chat. I'll finish this stage and then we'll have a look at some questions. Alrighty. So yeah, getting there. Cool. So starting to look a bit more, creepy, which was the intention, but the the block out of the body needs a lot of work. All right, let's see. Let's have a look at the chat and see if I can help with any specific question. Where is that brush? You made full wrinkles in clothes. Custom brush made, I think. Yes, so the brush that I use just for the wrinkles, that's part of the cloth and drapery brush pack. So it's just a pack of brushes that I use for different things to detail clothing and stuff like that. In most cases, when I want to do something a bit more realistic, I use Marvelous Designer just to simulate and get the base of the clothing. But then I always bring it into ZBrush and clean it up and add details, and that's what those brushes are also for. Cool. Hey Rhiannon, good question. Which one? Okay, I get stuck in my projects when I'm not sure what to add, how to move forward. Level form is add. So I would say just keep going. Like if you compare what I have right now with what I started with, if you don't believe that you can get to a better stage, then I would have already gone like, this is rubbish. I need to start again and do something a bit better. But it's just like if you have a vision, and I don't, I didn't have it at this point. But if you have something in your mind, try to keep pushing and just go with it until you get to a point that is like, okay, I've done everything that I can, and it still doesn't look good. Let's start over again. But just push through it. One thing I would say though is the most important thing is to get the blocking right, and I cannot stress enough how important that is, because if you manage to get the volumes and right and everything looking right at a very basic level with very low resolution, chances are that all the cool brushes, for example, that I have, and to add details and all of that's just gonna add complexity to the model, but it's not gonna change how it's read by the viewer, right? So for example, in this case, you ignore the body and the rest, but you kind of like have a rough idea of what this character looks like, right? Or what it is, and you have a rough idea with the expression, but the details and all the little folds and wrinkles that I added are barely visible, right? So my point is, if you're stuck at a point that either you could be stuck because you don't know what tools to use, or you could be stuck because you're not sure about the design. So there are like different ways of getting stuck, right? I tend to get stuck with the design part rather than the tools, because the tools, I'm very comfortable with ZBrush, for example. So I kind of like know what to use or how to do a workaround with one or the other. So that doesn't scares me as much as design stuff, because I get to a point that I think it's like, I thought this was working, and if it doesn't, what I do is I take a screenshot of, let's say, this guy at this stage, take a screenshot, save it into my desktop as my wallpaper, literally, like in my computer, leave it there, and start working on other things that I'm I tend to work on a variety of projects of different kinds throughout my week. So I will leave this one here, but it's always there in my screen. Come back tomorrow or in a couple of days with fresh eyes and look at it and go like, okay, I think the issue here is maybe the proportions are out of whack, or the head is like way too big, or things like this, and then I can go back and continue. So if I get stuck, that doesn't mean that that's it. I have to rethink everything again. I just need to let it be for a little bit and come back with like fresh eyes. Maybe do another round of references or collecting images that would help you kind of like get this right. But that's really all there is to it. Really, I would say. Yeah. Hopefully that helps. Do you do all your texturing with ZBrush, or do you use all the programs like Substance Painter? Marmo said, so a training material on that. Yeah, absolutely. So most of my texturing actually I do it with Substance 3D Painter. But even though I use 3D Painter for more, let's say, PBR workflow and more complex textures, I still rely on ZBrush Polypaint quite a bit. So I would do the Polypaint in ZBrush, and that's just a quick pass to like a prototype of what I'm doing. And I cover all of these in the Extra Mile course. So the Extra Mile course is a big course that I have online. It's kind of like where I spend most of my time during the week, just like planning stuff for it, because I'm currently in the process of developing a new stuff. Anyway, the point is I have that all in there, but I rely on the Polypaint in ZBrush. So I do that as a prototype, and then export the Polypaint as a set of texture maps, or I can export the object with it, or like as an FBX, and then in a rendering software use vertex color as well. But if I send the texture as Polypaint, or the Polypaint texture as a texture map into 3D Painter, I can use that as a base and then just start adding to it. So yeah, to answer your question, I do use that, and I have training for that 3D Painter. In fact, if you go to the ZBrush guides, you can just type texturing or filter by texture in the tutorials, and there are a few tutorials about that in there. Do you actively ask others for feedbacks at different stages of the sculpt? Yes, I do. I have like a private group with some friends where we'll just share things around. And to be honest, some of the stuff that I do, I just put it online, and that's why I share things as I go. Like you might see in my Instagram a lot of let me just continue editing this while I talk about this actually. So you might see that there's a lot of like work in progress and whips in my Instagram account, and that is because as I work on things, I can share the process, and I don't have to rely on, let's say, on industry pros, like the group of friends that I have that are just kind of like pros in the industry. They will give you like very good harsh feedback, which is great to grow. But any feedback from anyone just helps. Sometimes I might not see things that you guys might see, right? And it's like, oh, this is weird, or does it look right? Or you might not even know why it looks weird, or I don't know why it looks weird, but you can just point it out, and then once you point it out, it's like, oh yeah, this is not good. So yeah, like sharing progress, that's what I think it's invaluable, so that you can grow. And just be open-minded to whatever type of feedback. I mean, when I say open-minded, is I mean anyone has an opinion, right? And anyone could share it. But sometimes they're not trying to help. People not trying to help, but rather just, I don't know. It's kind of like the two sides of the coin, right? I value any opinion, and I'll take it on board if I think it's honest. But if it's something like, this looks like this so and so and is rubbish or something, it's like, well, thanks for the critique, but that's not a critique. That's just not helping. So I do like to get a lot of feedback, but you also have to learn how to filter it. That's why the community that we have built around you know, the courses and the workshops that I've shared in the Discord channel is really helpful, because most of the people there are either students of mine or have done some kind of course, so they understand a little bit of how I worked. Even most of the, you know, the mods on that community, they're actually graduates, let's say, from this from the courses, so they already know all my tricks, so they can also give you feedback relevant to what I've shared before, like, you know, and then kind of point you in the right direction, to find like some specific training if you need to, and things like that. But yeah, my point is that in that community, it's, you know, the feedback is literally to help you grow. Like you are you're not gonna find people saying, this is horrible, why are you in this, blah blah blah. And if they do, they just get kicked out by the mods. Anyway, so I think this is still looking pretty blocky, but I feel it's better. And as you can see, it's way different from what we had before with the simulation. I feel like, yeah, I feel this is fine. It's like the stick is going through it, but it's fine. Kind of like adds to the creepiness of this guy. All right, I was gonna do something, because we have 10 minutes left, just to show you one more technique to block it out, and then we can continue this in a couple weeks, so it's no problem. Let's see if there's any questions in the chat. Feel free to put them in there, and if it is something that I can talk about while I work on the next thing, I'll do that. But yeah, let's go ahead and create like some hands or creepy hands for it. So I'm gonna click on the append. Oh, actually, let's just do a quick save. Let's work separately so that we don't mess, or like, yeah, mess with this too much. So I'm gonna click on the tool palette, or the thumbnail, sorry. Click on the C-sphere. That is gonna create a separate tool. And I'm gonna use the scale to scale this down, and then the draw. So I'm gonna create a hand very quickly. So I'll show you how easy this is. I'm gonna click and drag, and that's gonna be the wrist, and then another one here for like just an indication of the arm. So that's the starting point, and then I'm gonna click here once. That's gonna be the beginning of the thumb, and then I'm gonna do the same thing here in the front. So one. By the way, if you wanna maintain the same size of whatever you draw in ZBrush, and this works as well for IMM brushes, you can hold, well, in this case you can hold shift and it will be the same size as whatever you have in here. So I'm just gonna try to keep them the same. I'll show you in a second what I mean. Right, so if you want to keep the next one the same, you can just click and hold the shift and it will be the same as the one that you did before. That's just in case you need it, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna make them smaller, and that's gonna be the tip of the fingers, and then I'll create the phalanges in between. All right, now with the move brush, I'm just gonna move this forward, and then just adjust the placement of this a bit. And I'm gonna make something very creepy. So like long figures, maybe. Maybe like the maybe you haven't seen it, but like if you just Google the skeleton of a frog, like the back, like the back legs of a frog, you'll see they're like really creepy, and how they kind of like flare out, and they're like really long. So that's sort of hand. I don't know if that makes sense. All right. So that, and then let's go ahead and push this up. I'm just gonna rotate things a bit, just to make it a bit more natural looking. And then once I have established, let's say, the length of this, which again, I think I'm gonna expand even more. Right? Once I have established the length, I can go back with the draw and click on, let's say, see here, here, no, here, 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 and here, and then another set in there, and one here for the thumb. We can use the rotate, actually, just to rotate these pieces. So you see that already looks pretty creepy. And I'm just gonna tweak the rotation of this so it's some kind of like a bad arthritis type of thing. All right, so that's the structure. That's the equivalent of blocking things out. That's another way of doing things with the C-spheres. For complex shapes and armatures, this is a really good way of going about it. But let me see. What are your thoughts on Blender? Fantastic. I absolutely love it for everything. It's really good. Okay, so now that I have this, I'm gonna go to the what am I looking for? Yeah, the adaptive skin, and I'm gonna click on this slide and set it to 0. Otherwise, 0 is gonna create a dynamesh object. But I actually want to have the, if I click on preview, I want to have the subdivision so that I can do a quick 0 measure, and it will keep those nicely distributed with the polygroups. I'll show you what I mean in a second. So dynamesh resolution, density of 2 is fine. Click on adaptive skin. That will create a new tool that it's actually a sculpting brush, or a sculpting mesh, sorry. So what I'll do with this is I'm going to use the move topological with the AccuCurve to give me that sort of like pointy effect. And that is just to adjust some of the volumes beforehand. And also I'm going to switch to the standard smooth brush just to smooth out these areas here. And this kind of like a rookie mistake that I've seen as well, that people tend to just make the fingers come from like this sort of like V shape, but there's actually quite a bit of a gap between fingers. So that is something that would hopefully help you as well, just to create hands if that's something you're into or you're working on. Just push this in. I'm gonna do this very quick because I know I have 5 minutes left. But we'll continue this in a couple of weeks. Just wanted to complete a bit of the block out of this guy, and we can do some of the hay and the extra details and effect maybe with fiber mesh. So just to show you something else. Alrighty. So that's not too bad. It's the general shape of the hand. Maybe here we need to connect this a bit better. And I'm going to use the standard brush just to add an indication of those knuckles in there. All right, so the reason I went for a subdivision approach rather than the dynamesh that's created with the adaptive skin is so that we have all of these polygroups which are created by the different C-spheres. So what I'll do is I'm going to hold Control and Shift with the select lasso selected, select rectangular piece, and I'm going to select all these pieces that make up the hand, except the fingers, with this one as well. This thing, and then maybe also the wrist, right? And I'm gonna give it a polygroup, so Control W, and then each finger or each each finger is going to be divided in three by well, except the thumb, by the different polygroups. So now I can go to the series measure and series measure here. I'm going to click on keep groups, and the difference between the groups are pretty clean. They're very clean loops, so I don't need to smooth groups. I'm going to set it to 0. And I'm going to set a target polygon count of 10,000, something like this. And adapt is on, and I'm going to click on series measure. So pretty close to what we have. We could go for a lower target count, but I think I like this actually. Yeah, I'm happy with this. You can improve this even more if you want in terms of like the amount of polygons, but I think it's working. So as you can see, the great thing about this technique is that now you have these polygroups that came from the C-spheres, and then with a quick series measure, keeping groups, then you have something that works quite well. You know, clean topology. Like I said, you can improve it even more if you want to, just to reduce the quantity of points or polygons. And then I can just go ahead and just to wrap it up today, to show you something else that is quite, you know, just another, I would say like a golden nugget, like a little extra cool technique. Because I have these polygroups, I can go ahead and click on this mask by feature. So I'm going to set this switch only to be groups. Click on that, and you'll see it just masks out those polygroups, like the difference between the polygroups. Hopefully you can see that. And then I can just grow that mask a bit. Maybe the other way around. I'm going to invert it, and I'm going to shrink it. Shrink mask. That way it's spreading a little bit better. That's it. And then I'm going to also mask out these areas. Actually, let's see what happens. I'm going to hide the mask, and then I'm going to use the inflate brush. Like so. Quite a bit. And then use the smooth brush to smooth them back down. So just a quick way of adding those sort of like knuckles and the phalanges and stuff like that. And of course, then you can go ahead and use something like the standard brush. But yeah, so hopefully you get the idea. The rest is just more of a sculpting and using the move brush to adjust things, but I'm gonna actually stretch this a bit more. Again, just to add to the creepiness level. And I want to make them like all bent and anyway, that could be more of the posing. Cool. So let's go ahead and bring this closer to the final one for today. So copy, go here, and paste. So I have that now, and whoops. All right, so I forgot that I had the transpose cloth enabled. So anyway, that's something cool that you can use for. Let's undo all of that. Let's go back to the normal transpose line. Here we go. And let's go ahead and play with the scale. All right, and I think it's a little bit too thick. At least the, this indication of the arm. Get a bit thinner. And yeah, there we go. So now we can obviously select the hand if you want, mirror and well, so we have it in both sides. And we have something a bit more interesting now for the next session, so that we can keep working on the details and wrap it up. Yeah, so that's it for today. Hopefully all of these techniques and bits and pieces that I shared today have been of help. But yeah, so I will leave it here. Let me see if there's one last minute question that I can answer. Do you use this method in your work? Yes. What method specifically? Every technique that I've been showing you, I have used it, or I use it every now and again. Depends on what I need. But yeah. I don't know if you have sculpted in Blender at all, but do you have any tips for sculpting mouths that are open in Blender? I know that the Blender tools have been getting better and better, and I'm a huge fan of Blender. I use it. I've been using it more and more recently, but yeah, it's hard to match this sculpting in ZBrush. I don't think it is really good. It's really good, and you could do certain things, but yeah, it's hard to match, I would say. So and plus I'm a lot more comfortable in ZBrush. So I for professional work, I just work a lot faster, and I feel more confident with ZBrush than with Blender. Awesome. So just a reminder, guys, before I let you go, that if you're interested, if you're kind of like new to ZBrush, if you're interested, the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course, it's open. You can just join now, and I shared a video before, and that video is just like kind of like you can go to the YouTube channel and it will be in there. It's just the kind of like a testimonial and some work from the students, so you can see what the students are actually doing in the course, which is pretty awesome, I think. Let me just share that with you once more. But again, it's a course for absolute beginners. So if you just know a bit of ZBrush and you're not confident enough, let's see. Yeah, I'll share it here, and then we'll finish with that. Have a look at that, and if you're interested, I'll see you in the course. All right, guys, so it's been great. Hopefully this again has been of help, and I will see you in a couple of weeks. Make sure that you check, if you're not part of the Discord channel, make sure that you check the Discord. I will be announcing the winners of the last month contest, the September of Dragons, this week. And there are a few other things coming up as well. I'll be in PAX, in Melbourne PAX. So if you're in Melbourne, around Melbourne, just come and say hi. I'm going to be demoing some stuff with Wacom, some really cool new stuff, so that I'm excited to try out. All right, guys, have a good one, and I'll see you